Ladies and gents, welcome to UX, and this is Has Trump accidentally crashed Russia's economy? While channel TLDR News EU, not the global one. There are multiple channels apparently. Yeah, how? This is like a 10-day old, so when the tariff just dropped down, that's okay. Russia has like insane amount of just overall restriction, right? Worse than North Korea. So I don't know what that means. I don't know how Trump's tariff would do that. If anything, if Trump's tariff affects oil export as well, which China did do that, right? Like China did put on a lot of tariffs, on US with that thing. So China and other countries could literally seek out oil and gas from Russia. So wouldn't that actually increase it? How would that cross Russia's economy? I don't know, right? So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Let's watch one. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. That would really help out the channel, and I would know what type of direction I should, focus more on, what type of videos to make. Because I watch many different type of videos. Like, yeah, so sometimes some type of videos get more traction and suddenly loses it. I don't know. So the more a video gets traction, the more I try to react to it. So yeah, let's do this one.
Video is brought to you by Nebula. When Trump announced his sweeping tariffs on so-called Liberation Day, one of the notable omissions on his chart of doom was Russia. The White House claimed this was because, thanks to Ukraine-related sanctions, the US no longer has a meaningful trade relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that true? Like, yeah.
With Russia. But this doesn't really stack up. The US still does billions of dollars in trade with Russia, and
So let me get this straight. You Western people were bitching to India. Why you supplying war? Why you supplying Russia with war funds with all this purchase you're doing? And yet even US was still doing business with Russia. This wasn't supplying war? Come on. That shit is insane.
Other countries that do far less trade with the US, like the uninhabited Heard and McDonald Islands, were still hit with tariffs. At first glance, this all looks pretty good for Russia. No tariffs are better than some tariffs. And this is yet more evidence that Trump still wants a closer relationship with Putin. Unfortunately for the Kremlin, however, one of the secondary consequences of Liberation Day has been a collapse in oil prices, which will dramatically reduce the Kremlin's much-needed oil revenues. So in this video, we're going to explain why oil prices have crashed, and why, even if it's not yet a disaster for the Kremlin, history suggests prices could fall further.
Okay, I love just statistic in general. I love how economy works. Doing this tariff, like, prices actually dropped, and Russia was already selling cheap, right? The only reason India bought a lot of barrels of like gas and everything from Russia, oil, is because they were selling really cheap because nobody else was buying from Russia, right? Like that's what that was, right? All the sanctions and things. So in the end of the day, kind of hurt Russia. Russia doesn't want to sell cheap, but they have to. Now they have to sell even more cheaper, even to the countries like India and things. That's insane.
We're getting remarkably close to 1 million subscribers, and currently 72% of you haven't yet subscribed, so lend us a hand and subscribe today. So let's start with a bit of context. Since really the pandemic, oil prices have been relatively high, with the Brent crude benchmark, which basically reflects the average international oil price, hovering around $80 a barrel. This is both higher than the historical average and arguably understates the true cost.
Okay, I don't know if this is like I never noticed that, I'm not gonna lie. But I mean, yeah, when I think about it, yeah, oil did get like costlier. Like it was, I think, 80 rupees, which is like close to $1 per liter. Now it's like near 100. I guess that's not that significant to me, so I never noticed that. But yeah, it did get costlier since COVID.
Of oil during this time, because oil imports are usually denominated in dollars, and the dollar was also pretty expensive. You can see this by looking at the so-called dollar index, which measures the dollar's strength against a basket of currencies. The dollar saw a surge in value throughout 2021 and never really fell back. This made oil imports even more expensive for every country apart from America, because they usually had to convert their domestic currency into dollars and then buy their oil. This was all great news for Putin, because Russia is one of the world's biggest oil exporters, and oil revenues helped fund its war in Ukraine. Now, sanctions meant that Russia had to sell at a discount. You can sort of see this if you compare the Brent crude benchmark with another benchmark known as the Urals, which essentially measures the price of oil cargoes loading at Russian ports. While there used to be very little difference between these two benchmarks, a gap opened up after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and for most of 2022 and 2023, Russian oil was being sold at about a $10 per barrel discount, although that gap has since closed somewhat. Nonetheless, even though Russia was selling its oil at a discount, global prices were still high enough that the Kremlin was raking in enough cash. In fact, according to the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies, Russia's energy revenues actually increased in 2022, and while they fell slightly in 2023, they were still basically at the same level as 2021.
Yeah, but this could be because Russia is like trying to sell more of it, right? Like just increase the production of it, so just they can like fund their war, right? So this is one of the reasons, and because they're selling somewhat cheaper, more people would buy it, right? This is basically how like Amazon sale or whatever Prime Day sale. This is the equivalent of that in a way. You increase the production, you try to sell it a bit cheaper. Way too many people buy it, you reap more profits.
A lot of this went to funding Putin's invasion of Ukraine, with oil and gas revenues accounting for about 35% of the federal budget. Unfortunately for the Kremlin, however, that could all be about to change. Since Liberation Day, oil prices have cratered, with Brent crude falling from about $75 per barrel at the start.
Is it just me? Why do I find it funny every time Trump comes with this kind of like a board? Obviously, he does that deliberately because he's a showman, right? Imagine any other president. Would Obama come with this kind of like, oh, look at this? Like, it's just always funny to me. And he knows like this is not going to do much, but it's a thing that people will talk about. It's a thing that will look funny. Right? In the end of the day, you can say anything about Trump, but he's a showman. I mean, come on.
Start of last week to about $60 at the time of writing. Again, this understates the true decline, because the dollar has also been weakening for the past few weeks. This is largely because traders are now anticipating a global recession, which will mean weaker demand for oil, but also because there's been an increase in global supply.
Look, man, I'm a businessman, civil contractor, so I'm a businessman, yeah. Yeah, I don't like that. I never ever, even during the COVID time, I ever thought about like, okay, this kind of a recession is going to fuck me as well. But COVID time, it did do that because factories shut down. I make factories. So yeah, that kind of like hit closer to home. After that, like, I'm like, okay, wait a minute, economical issues will affect me, right? So if people are like preparing for recession, yeah, that's going to, overall, how's that going to affect me? Maybe I'll have to build less factories and less things because people will invest less. People are like, okay, should we open up another factory? No, it's a recession. So it will affect me. I don't know. Usually I don't pay attention to shit like this, but yeah, whenever like nowadays I always like, oh shit, here's a recession come and it will affect me. And it will affect everyone. Prices will go up. Literally there is no sector which it won't affect.
This is mainly because Saudi Arabia has started pumping more oil, unwinding the voluntary cuts that it implemented last year to keep prices high, but also because there's new supply coming online from recently developed oil fields in Brazil, Guyana, and Norway. Given that Reuters reported Ural's price had fallen to $53 a barrel last Friday, when Brent was trading at $63 a barrel, this means Russian oil is probably selling for about $50 a barrel at the moment. A drop from $70 to $50 might not sound that bad, but once you take into account the fact that it costs Russia about $20 to pump...
What are you talking about? Of course it's a lot. It's like a 30% drop, close to 30% drop. Yeah, that scale is gonna hurt. What you talking about?
Per barrel, this means that the Kremlin's profit per barrel has now nearly been cut in half, from about $50 to $30. Russia's gas industry isn't having a great time either. Gas prices will probably fall with oil prices, and Russia is struggling to replace its pipeline exports to Europe. China was already digging its heels in over the new Power of Siberia pipeline, demanding that Russia offer lower prices. But this now looks even less likely to happen, given the recessionary impact Trump's tariffs could have on China's industrial sector. Now, to be clear, at the moment this all looks pretty bad for Russia.
To me, this feels like trying to track the butterfly effect. Maybe you could do it, and maybe this is all true, but there may be another elements working there. right? If US versus China intensifies, China would have no option but to look to Russia. So I guess China wouldn't have too much to bargain with, right? I don't know.
But it's not unmanageable. If prices were to stay around $50 a barrel, it would probably force Russia to run a budget deficit in the region of about 3 to 4% of GDP, around the upper limit of what the Kremlin could afford, given its difficulty in finding creditors. However, there are reasons to think prices could actually fall further in the near future, for two reasons. First, it looks like Saudi Arabia, which has the lowest pump costs of any country in the world, wants to push prices even lower, which is why they scheduled an impromptu meeting to announce their supply increases just hours before Trump launched his trade war. This is both because
Yeah, but that would piss off Russia. So would Saudi do that? Would Saudi make Russia their enemy? Wasn't there a recent thing just a year or two ago where Russia told Saudis to like hold off with the production, so it increased the demand, so like prices go up, right? And Saudi's like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. Like, I don't know what that dynamic is there.
they want to bankrupt American shale producers who can only pump profitably when prices are around $65 a barrel or higher and will struggle to roll over their debt with surging interest rates in the US, and because the Saudis want to punish other members of OPEC+, i.e. the international cartel of oil-producing states, who have secretly been pumping more than they should. For context, all OPEC Plus members are supposed to agree to produce a certain amount of oil. But, as with any cartel, there's always an incentive for OPEC Plus members to cheat and pump more than they say they will. This has happened more and more in recent
I mean, of course, this incentive. Just okay. Oh shit. All right, I can't believe this gang type mentality like that. Oh, you. It face of it, you would think like this is kind of like a scummy thing, right? Like all people agreeing if they should increase or decrease the production. But then again, right? Like somebody have to manage. That's the thing at a global scale. Who's the manager? Like who manages things? We live in certain type of system where like, oh, there's a law, there's a government. At the global scale, there is no law, there is no government. Like it's country's interest, right? When it comes to oil, somebody has to manage. So they all come together and manage. Like, okay, we need certain type of money, we need certain type of flow, so let's restrict it to this. And it's kind of like good in a way. Like sure, it raises prices, but it also decreases the use. We have very specific amount of oil and gas, so we can't just like increase the production, lower the price. We'll be empty before we know it.
recent years, with the worst offenders being Kazakhstan, Iraq, and the UAE, forcing Saudi Arabia to voluntarily cut its own production to keep prices stable, even though that means less cash for the kingdom. The Saudis have apparently decided to take this opportunity to push prices lower, squeezing these cheaters' profit margins now to deter them from cheating again in the future. Second, demand might be even weaker than people think. There are echoes of the 1997 Asian financial crisis here, when a combination of OPEC cuts and persistently weak demand post-crisis pushed oil prices below $10 a barrel. This would be truly catastrophic for the Kremlin, and Putin will be hoping that either Trump or the Saudis blink before then. This story, like much of the news, is worth paying
Sure, Trump's gonna blink. Of course he's gonna blink.
attention to in the weeks ahead, because with geopolitics in flux and Trump throwing the international order up in the air, there's a lot to keep an eye on. Every day, we're faced with weird headlines, from Musk declaring anyone who looks at him the wrong way a terrorist, to Trump declaring war on Jupiter to try and regain some extraterrestrial allies. Okay, that one wasn't real, but we do dive deep into the weird world of US politics in our series WTF.
Yeah, but go to original video page link and from there support this channel. Musk thing, like I'm not angry at Musk, I'm not gonna lie. I'm just not, right? Because if you give a gun to a child and he starts to shoot people, that's your fault. Trump is the one who gives power to Musk. Musk is not elected official. People didn't come together, heard his policies and elect him. That's not who he is. So it's not Musk. Musk is being Musk. He's the richest man on the planet. A bit of ADHD, more of ADHD, and there you go. You have the end result now. Like, come on, it's Trump who's giving him power, right? And yeah, in the end of the day, like Trump crashing Russia's economy and Putin actually, okay, maybe Trump will blink. I don't know. I don't think Trump is type of person who blinks. Doesn't matter what. His house could be on fire. He's not gonna blink. So there was a time where Putin said Biden is like more manageable while Trump is not, and people are like, oh yeah, right. Of course he would say that. he and Trump is, like tight. So he says that so Trump comes in office. No, I think he actually meant it because he can see what Biden's gonna do. He can see shit like this where Trump just gonna fuck it. Okay, here's a tariff. The world economy get screwed. Oil prices drop down, and Putin's like, what the fuck? Where that come from? So yeah, Trump is an X factor, right? It's like a orc in Warhammer 40k with a random factor to it. Like what's gonna happen? Who knows, right? In tabletop, orcs have this random factor to them. That's what Trump is. Like nobody knows what's gonna happen. This is insanity. Okay, well, that was Has Trump crashed Russia's economy? Watch all TLDR news. If you like my next one, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.